realized my whole life was just athletics. That's it. I went on a trip with our team. We would spend 3 weeks in Europe and playing games, and we'd have these days off, and I would just sleep on the bus. Well, everyone's sightseeing. I didn't even get out and explore because I literally had no idea, other than athletics, I was interested in anything else. I had to develop that. That was my whole life. So I think that's a common occurrence.
Yeah, no, it's a very common occurrence. And it's actually something now, like, believe it or not, I have married people that come to us for coaching, which I didn't understand at the beginning, but now I do. And it's because they feel like they will becoming divorced.
Yeah.
And we don't advocate divorce. You know, divorce is not something that we're out there saying, yes, everyone should do. Divorce often kind of replaces one set of issues with another set of issues. Yeah. It's not something anyone does on a whim and shouldn't do on a whim.
Yeah, well
but
said.
We actually even have talked to married people and married couples and help them because we say, you know, part of your job as a married person is to stay interesting.
Yeah, great. Yeah, right? Great way of saying it.
Yeah, and that's that. I think we miss that, and so you know, we talk to a lot of divorcees who they've obviously already got divorced, and they say like, you know, my ex-husband or my ex-wife, they were just so boring. They just became so boring. Everything was so boring. We just did the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
They had nothing to talk about, nothing to kind of, you know, whatever. And that's when you see a lot of the relationships start to grow apart.
Yeah.
And as I say, like people either ponds or rivers. So people either have a stagnant personality and they're just happy to just stay there and stagnate. But most of us, we're rivers and we will keep going. And if you're not with us, you're not going to be ending up with us at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's well said. There becomes a complacency that creeps in. And what would you say are some tips to keep things interesting then? I mean, you said you do there's people come for divorce coaching. So if somebody's not quite ready to divorce, whether it's, I don't know, do you do the personal coaching or do you have people that work for you that do the coaching, first of all? And secondly, both. Okay. What type of tips would you give people that maybe are in that, they're both in the pond and would like to get back to the river? What kind of suggestions would you give?
You often find out a lot about somebody, even somebody you've known a long time. You can find out new things about them that spark new interest and new excitement between you if you go out and you try new things. And I kind of like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, you will not find me climbing any rock walls. However, it's a good thing if I've never done it before to at least try it once. You see how people act under different circumstances. When you're just like stuffed in your house by yourself with your spouse, you really don't get to experience the joy of experiencing things together. And so I definitely say, you know, travel a lot, try new restaurants, try new foods, go see different types of movies, whatever it is, because even if you find out that you don't like them, the chances are in the process you will find something out about your significant other, which can create kind of a new feeling about them and a new kind of interest in them.
It gives you something to talk about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because each other's reactions, you start discussing it. Like you just said, isn't that, I mean, in the end, we all just want to connect. We want to talk and be heard.
Yeah. Spouse enjoying life and being happy and experiencing new things and being passionate about things. And I often talk to people and they say, you know, at the beginning of our marriage, I love my wife, I love my husband. They were so passionate about everything and everything was new and exciting. And now it's just like a flat blur. And so it's your responsibility to stay interesting, to stay, you know, wanting to kind of guzzle up life and not just sip it.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes us interesting.
Have you run across situations with people where they were at the end and taking on some of these things and you saw a complete rebirth? Did you have a story like that?
Yeah, actually I have. I've helped two couples that I can think of who really, when I started speaking to them, I was like, oh, they're definitely getting divorced.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them had a situation where they had started to develop feelings for somebody else
Oh, wow.
external to their marriage, because, we tend to suffer from the grass is always greener when really it isn't. And I kind of coached them back together, and they're doing really, really good. And I'm like very proud of that, because they had a lot to lose. They have children, they have family, they have everything. And sometimes it isn't that really somebody else is better. It's just they seem more sparkly and interesting. And so if you get the sparkle back in your marriage, I do believe that in many cases you can save it.
What was there something, and I don't want to get too personal in their situation, but was there a specific thing that triggered it, that made a deeper impact on helping them turn it around versus something else?
No, and I just think, the only reason I mention them is because I think that story is so true, right? How many of us, when we're in a marriage for so long, start to kind of shift our kind of who we're paying attention to, from our spouse to somebody else? And I don't even necessarily mean sexually. I mean emotionally. I mean time-wise. That instead of paying attention to your spouse, you're now, much more interested in hanging out with your friends at work, or, we talk about work wives and work husbands.
Yeah.
And now you're with somebody who you're spending a lot more time with than you're really spending at home with your family.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that you're continually, the person you're going to for advice, the person you're going to for support is your spouse.
So
should be no one else.
What I hear in that is, with the dual income homes and people outside, both spouses working, that in a lot of cases, the person you spend the most time with is a coworker, and they all of a sudden become the confidant, the person you're sharing everything with. And is that, it's that lack of personal communication that starts to create the wedge, the lack of time?
I think it's lack of time, and I think too, it's a subconscious need for attention from somebody else. Because the other thing that we do as spouses is not only are we spending more time with our co-workers, etc., but we're also hyper focused on our children often.
Yeah.
And when the mom is hyper focused on the children, or the dad is, and they're spending every night of the week, running those kids back and forward. I know I did it. I had soccer 6 days a week. I mean, I was exhausted. I had no time for my ex.
Yeah.
Because you just don't. You're exhausted. You're mentally exhausted. You're physically exhausted. And so we all can be guilty in different ways of shifting that attention. And we are basically needy people. We all need attention.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask something. I was like, that's too personal.
Yeah.
Because we all seek attention in different ways, there's the whole 5 love languages. Do you, is it physical touch? Is it words? What is it for everybody? Have you seen, actually, that is a good question. Since you started this site, have you seen maybe a shift in one direction or the other of people needing attention in a certain way more than others that you hadn't seen before? Has that changed at all?
No, not really. And I hate to say it's pretty stereotypical.
Yeah.
I would say, men think sex is attention, where women think emotional connection is attention. But women will trade sex for emotional attention also.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of the things that I'm most surprised at. That I've spoke to over 6,000 divorcees, and I have to say honestly, I think just as many women cheat as men cheat.
Yes. I
think they're just smarter at it. Quite frankly, they get caught less.
Yeah.
But and we all, I'm not judging anyone, but we all have our own way of coping with things.
Yeah. That's the one thing I've noticed is with, the shift in society of women working so much. And I'm not saying that's a problem, but what I am saying is what I have seen is a huge shift that, well, you see this in the younger generation. The women are incredibly emotionally detached and the men are incredibly needy. I see that in the younger generation that the emotional dynamics are switching. Women are becoming more, well, let's face it. In my age group, what were women told? look, honey, if you're going to come in here and to be the boardroom, you need to grow a pair of these and cut that emotional stuff out. And in their defense, that's what they had to do. Now, I can see, especially with my clients, older, women more in my age group, they have a hard time being emotionally invested. And have you seen a similar shift?
Yeah, and we're the sandwich generation, and I talk a lot about this with most of my friends in their 30s to like 30 to 60, obviously, because most of them aren't divorced before 30, and we are the sandwich generation, so we've been modeled a very traditional form of marriage.
Yeah.
So, we've grown up, my parents have been married 50 years. It is what it is. So most of our parents are still together. And they usually have very traditional role models. So, my mom never worked, my dad always worked. That's what I grew up seeing. Yeah. But then we grew up as children hearing that equality, women can have it all. You have to be this, you have to be that, you have to succeed, you have to whatever. And then we get married to people, and the man is like, well, I've grown up seeing my mom take care of my dad, and I've grown up seeing my mom take care of my dad, but now we're not allowed to take care of each other in the same way because we're battling this kind of equality thing also.
I think that's great. I mean, that's exactly what I'm seeing. It's a constant power struggle over who's in charge.
Yeah. And I always say to people that, maybe there's not any right or wrong answer. It's something that you two have to come together and agree on. Just because it doesn't, politically correct, or it doesn't look this way to somebody or whatever, as long as you two are happy in what the decisions you make, if whoever looks after the kids, whoever cooks, whoever cleans, whoever does the money, whatever, it doesn't matter what that looks like as long as you are both okay with it.
Exactly. I mean, that's the proponent, or the model I help my clients with is, look, I'm not the judge. It's your life. I don't know if it's right or wrong. You do. If you, as a man, want to take what used to be a typically female role, or vice versa, I don't care. Are you walking in who you want to be? That's what matters. But I do see we're still in flux. I love that term, the sandwich generation, of we haven't quite found everybody's piece in that. And maybe there, as you said, there really is no piece. We pick which part of the sandwich we want to be, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I say that about divorcees all the time. An awful lot of us, awful lot of us have kind of this thing that we owe everyone an explanation about a divorce.
Yeah.
And I would say, no, you don't. Because truly, the only two people know what a marriage is like and what your relationship is like is the two people in it. How many times have we seen the perfect family sitting in the front row of church looking perfect, and 2 weeks later we find out that they're getting divorced and someone's ran off with someone, right?
Yeah.
Like, what you see is not the reality of what living with somebody and being married to them is every day.
Yeah.
And so, we should all need to kind of try not to judge everyone as we go along.
Yeah. And as far as the divorce process, besides working on self-esteem, I had cut you off, we got sidetracked. Give me two other things that can help people going through a divorce.
Being grateful. It's so cliche, but it's massive, because we talk about divorce as loss. That's, most of the places you go, most of the information you collect from the internet will tell you divorce is all about loss and grief.
Yeah.
And obviously that is an element. But if you focus on that part of it is just going to grow. Some people get stuck in that part, and I counsel them, 12 years later, and they've never got out of that grief and loss.
Yeah.
But every day, if we are grateful for the things we have, and we understand that divorce is actually an opportunity for a whole entire life, and we look at everything we've gained from divorce as opposed to everything we've lost from divorce, then I think we're, in a much better place to start our new life and be grateful for another chance. I mean, divorce is not death.
Yeah.
And I think people forget this. Divorce is just a change of life.
Yeah.
And you can change it for the better. How many of us go on to live better post-divorce lives?
Yeah.
I know I do. I know you do.
Yeah. I